Good.
So this is really, I mean, such a great, you know, everyone's talking about your book, but this is like comes on the heels of quite a successful career for being young still. How were you able to, you know, pull this off and you know, get such credibility so quickly?
It was never the plan to get credibility. It's just that I really love what I do, and with each book, I think there's a change, that I'm growing as a writer. With each book, I'm able to do things I couldn't do before, and the excitement doesn't stop for me. You know, the excitement of being able to discover new things about myself, about the world, about how to look at things. So,
what do you do in those moments, you know, as an aspiring writer, when you're stuck and you just want to bang your head in the wall? Have you have those moments as well?
Bang your head in the wall.
Right. What I learned over time, I've been writing novels for 16 years now, actually. So what I learned over time is that when it feels like I can't write, it's actually that I need time to think.
To sort of ruminate.
We need time to think and to live and to experience, and for those experiences to settle down into the unconscious, and then they get kind of welded with what's original in us.
Right.
And then they come back out, hopefully, as writing, as art, but it takes time. You can't always do it like that.
That's part of the thing, like as a, you know, having the patience of knowing that in a way it will ultimately come through you, but when you're focusing on, oh my God, I gotta write 10 pages tonight, 10 pages, like that's not necessarily, that's not a realistic way of discovering what needs to come out, right?
Well, you're talking about anxiety, of course, and I think that what I can say is that it's absolutely familiar to me, but over time, the more times you do something, in this case writing a novel, and the way that I do it is never knowing where I'm going. A novel is a question, it's a series of questions. So for me, it's about asking questions and discovering things. So I write the first page and then the second and the third. So it's not about knowing in advance, but that can really cause a lot of anxiety.
What happened before the first page of this book? How did the seed, did it come to you?
What was I thinking about?
Yeah.
I was thinking about a lot of things. One is a feeling that we're living in a time in which we've made a religion out of a certain kind of knowing, and that's information, rational knowledge. Everything, the comfort we get when we lay our fingers on Google and we feel, oh, all of the known world is accessible to us. And really, I feel we've made a kind of religion out of knowing everything. But underneath that is a kind of anxiety about not knowing.
Right.
And yet, for thousands of years, we as a species have always had ritualized ways of turning toward the unknown and the unknowable and letting it fill us with wonder, with awe.
Well, the beauty
being changed
is, I mean, this is something that, you know, I think is becoming more and more, you know, talked about, of people having, you know, these experiences where really the knowing is not necessarily where the answers are, like you're saying. The knowing is like once you start writing this book, like, did you, like you were explaining the process, like it's somewhat based on your family, but it's not nonfiction, it's fiction, but it's also based on your own experiences. How do you kind of meld the two together without it being fiction versus nonfiction?
And follow-up question, the main character, Nicole, one of the main, there's two main, like in this multiverse that you've sort of created, so that's the follow-up question.
Right. Well, what I would say is that everything that any novelist writes is always a mixture of the personal, right? Memories, experience, observation, things you've read, things you've seen that have happened to you, and invention, right? The imagination and the leap of empathy it takes to imagine yourself into another life, another character. So I've been doing that, as I said, for 16 years. And the question that came to me was, why is it that we can do that in literature? You do it as a reader, too. It's not just that I do it as a writer when I make a character. When you fall in love with a character, you become him a little or her a little. You add facets to your experience. So why in life do we not realize that also the story we tell about ourselves, it's a story, it's a narrative, right? And why can't we stretch it and expand it the way that we allow ourselves to do in literature? So by calling a character Nicole, I can say to you, here, I'm inviting you into this process. Here you're going to you recognize some familiar things about me. You know I'm a writer. You know I have 2 children. I live in New York. And this is a character, this Nicole, whose the forms of her life have grown too small, too narrow. She needs to break them to leap into something new, to find her freedom. So you're going to come with me in this journey that we always do when we read and when we write the story of ourselves, which is we're going to expand it and grow it and make it bigger so that it fits us better. So that doesn't mean, here's the story of my life in all of its smallness and limited capacity.
No, because you want it to be, because you want people to also, you know, also expand, you know, not just reading a book that has a beginning, middle, and an end. I mean, when there's a lot of permutations to into it, people are going to come out with different ways of seeing the world, different lenses. So they're going to actually learn something from their own discovery through reading a book like this,
especially also like you talk a little about how we don't notice half of what's going on around us. Everything is in the darkness until we put our own light on it.
Until we make a story, until we write our own story, or we attach a kind of coherence to our lives, because they're chaotic, there's disorder in them. But what we know about the human brain is that it needs a story, it needs coherence so that we can live. And so we're writing it all the time, it's just we're not very conscious of it, and sometimes we don't write it well. We keep ourselves stuck in something that doesn't work anymore and that feels too limiting to us. So the book is very much about people who are on the cusp of breaking those old stories, breaking those old forms, and taking a leap into something
which is
larger.
What, I mean, this is amazing, and for you to now like have an opportunity. I mean, it's been translated in so many languages, and congratulations, it's translated into Hebrew. Were you the one that did the translation?
No,
because that's the ultimate challenge. Is I'm going to translate my own book without Google Translate.
No, I've had the luck of all 4 novels have been translated into Hebrew by the same translator, Shaul Levin, who I understand is wonderful, but I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you for sure.
You weren't making sure like they were making they were saying Anayim Yafod or something like that.
Who knows? Who knows?
You never know. Maybe change the names of the character. You never know. This paragraph could use some.
Anyway, well, it's really great, and it's really great to have you, and it's just so refreshing to see that there's like a flock of women, you know, in our, you know, that are in our demographic that, you know, have matured and have something to say, and to be really taking, you know, the literary world to the next level. Like it's, you know, refreshing.
I think they've always had plenty to say. It's just that they haven't always been given a voice, and they haven't always been given the time and the place,
a room of their own,
to be heard. And I do feel that is something that is changing, and still needs to change more, frankly.
100%. But do you feel like with everything that's going on, this is like, you know, the positive out of it is that people are overall collectively going to feel more comfortable actually just speaking what their truth is? I mean, seeing all the changes that are going on around us.
The hope is that. The hope is that. But I think there's always a question of how well and how large people's capacity is to listen to what's actually being said.